Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not to Comic Book. This being a show where we talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the season finale of Pennyworth as well as the series finale of Preacher. Like always, if I'm talking about something that you want to listen to, you can always look in the description down below. I'll include the time to start talking about each of the respective shows. So, for example, if you want to hear what I had to say about the season finale of Pennyworth, you can skip to what I had to say about the series finale of Preacher. But the first thing I'm going to talk about is the season finale of Pennyworth. A great season finale. There is so much great stuff that went down in this episode, so let's break it down. First and foremost, you had Alfred leaving because he's trying to go on a ship. You know, I was kind of wondering if Dave Boy and Basil were going with him, but it's like in the grand scheme of things, yeah, they were kind of along with the ride with this whole thing, but he's the one that's kind of in the most trouble in this regard, so they were sending him to America, in particular New Orleans. But I love that, like, it's like, well, while that was all happening, everything else was going crazy because you have like Harwood being like, oh, I have the queen, I've got the army support, so yeah, you need to kind of go with what I'm saying. So, and I also have, you know, the pretender to the throne, obviously, like the Duke and his wife. So everything's kind of in my corner. So if you don't kind of go with what I want, basically it's going to get super bloody. But the general is kind of, which is interesting. But I guess it's like, as someone who's been to war, led into many different battles, it's like we don't. For one, it's like he doesn't want a civil war. He doesn't want a whole bunch of bloodshed. It's like we don't need to go spilling English blood. So it's like if we can try at the very bare minimum, let's try and make it so that we don't have to turn this into like a bloody battle. So it's like give him 24 hours at the very least, you know, which Harwood was willing to listen to him because the prime minister wasn't willing to bow down to his demands, because it's like basically getting the government to kind of break up in a sense that the prime minister steps down. Harwood becomes the new prime minister and all of that. So all that kind of set everything in motion because now the Raven Society is kind of running everything. Because of that, ships can't leave, and the police are like, oh, we came here to stop suspicious looking people. It's like, oh, so where are you guys? Yeah, we're sailors for this boat. He's like, yeah, and then Dave Boy had to open his mouth and says, anchors ahoy, anchors away, and Baza is just kind of like, and Alfred's just kind of like, they're just kind of like, dude, why'd you shut your mouth, Dave Boy? And then the police are like, all right, where's your cards? And then you have Alfred being like, for fuck's sake. And they take down the police and everything. And then Alfred turns to him and it's like, anchors away? He's like, I don't know, it came out wrong. I'm like, I love how much of a screw up you are, Dave Boy. I love it. Okay. So at this point, they kind of go to the only people they can rely on, because at the same time, you have Thomas and Martha. Thomas is trying to get Martha out. It's like, yep, everything's kind of done. The No-Name League is kind of going to be on the run because the fact is the Raven Society's won. It's like, you know, Martha wants to go to Undine's side because for her, it's like, well, even if the Raven Society's there, like the fact of the matter is, I'm not going, like, you might not believe in all of this, but I do. I believe in what the No-Name League represents. So the fact of the matter is, I'm going to be by Undine's side. And Thomas drops a bomb on her. You're going to support the woman who had her own husband killed? And she's like, what? It's like, yeah, she had her husband killed, set it up, had him murdered in front of her. And it's like, no, it's like, yes, how I know is because it was your boy, our good old friend, Alfred Pennyworth, who pulled the trigger. I'm like, yo, because I didn't expect him to know, but because it turns out the CIA actually set that whole thing up because they wanted her, they figured Undine would be a lot more someone that they can manipulate and control. Like, obviously, they wanted the No-Name League more in control than the Raven Society just because it's like, it served their purposes more. But Undine was someone they felt like they could manipulate more, which then is in the back of my mind. So is that why John set this whole thing up? John is either he's actually an undercover CIA agent, or at the very least, he's in league with the CIA. It's like, I get to do my thing, you leave me alone from doing mine. Maybe that's kind of the benefit of that. I mean, usually government agencies make deals like that. It's like, you keep kind of doing your thing as long as you provide us the means and opportunities that we need. So that was the whole thing, which, you know, okay, so Martha's processing all of that, but still, it's like, woo. But lo and behold, who shows up? Hey, it's Alfred, all reunited like a happy little family in a way. So it's like, hey, so what's going down? It's like, wait, the queen was kidnapped? Alfred's learning about all this firsthand. And then some other information gets dropped. It's like, wait, Sykes was there. It's like, oh, the woman with the specific accent. It's like, had to be Sykes. And then, yeah, the lady there wasn't Bet, though. And then you had Thomas, well, how would you know unless you were there? Right. It's like, oh, the bad sniper, that was you, which Dave Boy and Bads are laughing like, oh, you think Alfred missed because he did a terrible shot. If he wanted you dead, you'd be dead. It's like, oh, so you missed on purpose. It's like, yeah, he's like, because Martha realized, she's like, when you realized it was us, that's what changed the tune. He was like, yeah, I was still tempted, but I figured it wasn't fair play. And Martha's like, well, I guess I should thank all of you. And Baz was like, actually, you shouldn't thank me. Like, you should just thank Alfred, because I was all for shooting you. And Dave Boy's like, me too. And then I love Thomas being like, well, thank you, Alfred, and fuck you, both of you. I just love that. So it's like, if I save the queen, it's like, hey, I can go back home to mom and dad, and like, guys, we'll surely get knighted for this. It'd be some spectacular stuff. So it's like, because obviously Thomas is still like, no, let's just get out of the country. But Martha's like, if you want to get out of the country, you can. So on their little drive there, I love that little moment between Martha and Alfred. They haven't spoken since, I think, Alfred and her kissed was the last time they've actually interacted with each other, because Martha's avoided being around Alfred because she felt bad, because it's like, when we were off kissing, Esme was getting murdered, so kind of puts a little stamp on that. So, but it's like, oh, how are you? He's like, I'm good. She's like, but, what about you and Anti? He's like, I haven't really taken time to look, so that's a whole thing in itself. I mean, no matter the circumstances, Martha does care about Alfred, so she's trying to make sure he's okay, especially after finding out, like, oh, all the stuff that you kind of been up to, because she even brings it up later on. It's like, so did you know that, so it was you that killed Undine's husband? And it's like, why are you bringing that up now? So it's like, you were the one that did it. Did you know that Undine was the one that hired you for it? It's like, I mean, at this point in time, Alfred's like, well, why does it matter? I mean, it's done. No matter who hired me, who was behind all of it. I mean, I killed the dude, so it kind of is that. But I think it's also because Martha knows how much Alfred struggled with all of that stuff, like, trying to leave his soldier days behind, and subsequently, even since leaving the army, he's killed a handful of people. So I think that's kind of something that's kind of weighed on him, and plus, like I said, she's looking out for him. It's like, since losing Esme and everything, it's like, how are you, actually doing, So it turns into that whole thing. So then it comes into a whole thing between Thomas and Martha, because it's like, oh, are all American women like this? Alfred's asking, and Thomas is like, no, Martha's a special case. And it's like, I'm looking out for you. She's like, why? No one asked you to really kind of do that. He's like, well, I'm trying to, help you out in this whole situation because I like you. She's like, oh, because you like me, you're trying to like give me to like abandon what I kind of, this whole endeavor and stuff like that. He's like, no. He's like, well, yes, forgive me for caring about you. I give up. And then I love it. She takes a couple seconds, and then she goes, oh, because it took her a while to process. It's like, oh, you like me. And she's like, oh, because you like me. It's like, wait, when you mean like me, you mean like you like me? He's like, what? And he's like, no, just forget I said anything. And she's like, wait, do you mean that you actually like me? And she's like, sexually? And he's like, I'm so sorry, Alfred. Alfred's like, pretend I'm not even here. But you see the look on Martha's face. He's actually kind of happy to hear, like, wait, you like me? That's why you acting like this, because you care about me. I thought that was such a like sweet little moment. At the same time, Bet and Peg looking after the queen, which is interesting, getting her to read that message and everything, kind of letting the Raven Society kind of win and everything. But also, like, when they're playing, for one, it's like, we're not going to have you say that we didn't treat you right, because we're up here trying to feed you and everything. And also, they're playing a card game, and the queen is winning. And I love it the first time. It's like, she gets the card, and Bet has to give it to her, and she's like, fuckery. And then she does it again, and she's like, all right, you're too damn good at this game, which Peg is like, really? You're saying that she's cheating? She's literally she's been kidnapped, has a knife to her throat, her throne is literally in the balance, and you're saying that she's so petty that she wants to win, that she's going to cheat, huh? And then she goes, but are you cheating? Is what Peg asks. I love it. Just like that interaction is so damn good. And then, lo and behold, the squad shows up to the rescue. I love, like, Thomas trying to be like, oh, we're here trying to contact Miss Sykes for this. But Martha was like, fuck that. punches the lady in the face, and they come into the house, and it's like, okay, Alfred's asking us, like, Bet, could you please put the knife down? All right, Peg, could you tell your sister to please put the knife down, please? Because, Alfred didn't want to shoot her. It's like, literally saved my life. You had my back with the whole cousin, Esme situation. Because obviously you cared about Esme. You helped me get revenge, take down her killer. It's like, and you saved my life when it came to Aziz and the others. So it's like, I got your back in this regard. So I owe you for what you've done. So that's why she wasn't willing to kind of shoot him. And then I love her being like, I didn't give up. Because she told me to. Like, I love that. Like, at the end, it's like, I didn't lose. I simply stopped because my sister asked me to and told me to. Because it's like, after everything we've kind of been through, I don't want you to get shot right in front of me. Because I love you, sis. It's like, oh, there's a heartwarming moment to that. And it's like, huh. And then they say the statement of, this is too easy. I'm like, yeah, it is. I was like, oh, some other people going to show up? Lo and behold, the husband comes out the closet. He stabs Dave Boy. Bazza shoots him in the head. And then Dave Boy's like, I was like, is Dave Boy about to die from that? But it didn't seem like it was something life-threatening. But it's like, huh. He's like, Dave Boy's like, would you take a look at that? And it's like, yep. The queen gets, there, she contacts the general, which... basically, all their plans end up falling apart. Frances had her reservations about this whole situation, about doing what they were doing, but she kind of went along with Harwood because I think, she did believe him, because it's like, hey, he believes in what the Raven Society believes, and, he is trying to look out for the best of this country. Granted, we're going about this a crazy way, but lo and behold, their ambitions all kind of land them nowhere as they get arrested, which is also sad because we see that Alfred's dad was so overjoyed. It's like, we're the old guard, yes, yeah, we're winning. It's like he's celebrating and stuff like that, and then immediately he kind of falls into depression later on because, it all kind of falls apart. And then we had that moment where it's like the queen was like talking to Alfred and everything. It's like, oh, don't call me ma'am. It's like you're talking to my mother. It's like, he's like, well, what should I call you? Then she whispers in his ear. I'm like, what? Then Dave Boy and Bazza show up, and Sandra's dad is like, oh, the crazy stuff is going on. So how was your week? They look at each other like, not bad at all. It's like the craziness that their week has been. It's like, and Sandra's like, yo, so where's Alfred? They look at each other. I'm like, no, he can't be. And they take a swig of their drink, and lo and behold, hard cut. Him and the queen banged it out. It's like, Alfred, you madman. Holy shit. It's like, dude, how am I not knowing you have stories like this? That you and the queen banged it out, dude. Holy shit. Even her being like, don't tell anyone. At the moment she says that, I'm like, who would believe him? And he literally goes, no, I'll keep it secret. Who'd actually believe me? I love that. And she was even asking, oh, why don't you stay for breakfast? He's like, breakfast? It's midday. She's like, well, lunch then. He's like, I gotta go check on mom and dad. It's like, the queen really fancies you. It's like, well, you saved her life, but it's also like, I think she just naturally finds you fascinating. Even later on, she calls you up like, oh, I'm up here bored. It's just like kind of a dinner and all that, celebrating her victory. But it's like, it'll be hard for you to contact me, but you can always, I'll call you. It's like, yo, I don't think this is just kind of a casual thing. I think the queen is really into you. It's like, yo, who knew your boy Alfred had that kind of pull? That's actually really damn impressive. So I just thought that was kind of a pretty dope situation. Obviously, Alfred's able to go back home and everything. It's like, yeah, the family and everything. They're happy. Obviously, like I said, Alfred's dad isn't too keen about the whole situation. Obviously, but his dad kind of pieces it together, goes like, yeah, you had something about restoring your queen and all that. And he's like, yeah, And he's actually talking about the fact that, well, he's like, good job, son, good job. I'm like, we know you like the Raven Society. You're even part of the Raven Society. It's like, but the fact is you're saying all this stuff. I guess it's like you don't want Alfred to worry or know. I'm like, that's kind of interesting. But then, like, Alfred even goes as far as says, like, it seemed like the Raven Society would kind of be all, like, what they represent, what they want is kind of in line with who you are personality-wise. And he's like, yeah. But also Alfred dropped the whole, like, yeah, mom told me about the whole cancer thing, which is like, I just didn't want you to worry and fuss about it. He's like, the fact is, I'm proud of you, son, and I love you. No matter what they say, let that, I want you to remember me for who I am right now and stuff like that, no matter what they say about it. The moment he said, I was like Alfred didn't say anything because he hadn't caught on yet, but I was like, what did you do? And it's like, dude, I was like, because I know that he was a part of it, but I thought he was making some last-ditch effort. Not just, I think he did it himself. Like, it seems like, because the fact is he did it on his own later on. I'm skipping around, but I guess the rest of the old guard got arrested. I didn't even talk about it. Poor Undine, like, it's kind of sucky that her story ended that way, but she got hung. We do see that not Jack, I keep doing that just because of the Ripper thing. John ended up getting away, so I was like, alright, so what the hell is, okay, so there's that whole situation. I'm like, okay, so what's that going to be, you know? Along with all of that, like, there's the whole Martha and Thomas thing, which is like, ooh, they're looking all cute and everything. It's like, she goes in, she's like, so, you know what you said before? And he's like, well, he's like, it's all kind of a blur. She's like, you said you like me. And he's like, what? And she's like, am I wrong? He's like, well, I like a lot of women sexually. I even like her being like, you said, did you like me sexually? And, you know, and she's like, well, tell me, was I wrong? And it's like, she's like, well, the fact of the matter is I'm kind of starting to think that I like you too. And they start making them like, yo! It's like, oh, that's awesome. Because I love how awkward Thomas was. He's just like, you know, there were long pauses in between his responses and stuff like that. It was kind of adorable. But at the same time, we see that, you know, Alfred's dad is setting up a bomb and everything. So that's going down. And at the same time, it's like, I think just because she's kind of enjoying the moment and everything, Martha's kind of laughing. He's like, I hope you're not going to laugh. Like, when she's like, no, I'll try to restrain myself. And then he gets shot, which I'm like, okay, that could be literally a multitude of people. Could it have been John doing that? I mean, but why would he? Would it be the CIA because they were hoping to take him out because it's like, oh, he knows too much? Because it's like you help restore the queen into power. Like, was it that? Or like, what is up with that? Like, there's a short list of people that could have been, but I don't think it was like the old guard or anything. Because even, you know, he had said it earlier, like, they're going to come after us because they know that we were with the No Name League and everyone from the No Name League got killed. So it's like, could this be people from the Raven Society? Could the old guard, other people within it still be alive? I mean, other people pulling for the Raven Society. It's even great because even Lord Harwood's like, even with all that, like, you know, even in failure, you always kind of have a backup plan. Because it's not just him in prison. It's also, obviously, Francis, Bet, and Peg. So, obviously, the old guard situation. Because Alfred and his mom both had, like, a bad feeling. It's like, what is this about? And then his mom drops the info. Like, it doesn't seem like this whole Raven Society thing is a new thing. It's like, it almost seems like a generational thing. Because she's like, oh, it's almost like the Masons. Because in her mind, she thought it was kind of like something that was just kind of like a pastime. Like, the camaraderie is what he but it's like, no, he believes in the Raven Society and whatnot. And it's like, yeah, he tried to keep me out of it. But it's like, of course, a wife is going to find out about this type of situation. Alfred kind of pieces it all together. And he goes and infiltrates, you know, where the party's being held at, and lo and behold, there's his dad with the bomb, and Alfred's there telling his dad, it's like, do not do this, Dad. And it's like, at the end of the day, your mom is going to understand why I did this. And it's like, who cares about, like, after all of this? I care about right now. And it's like begging his dad not to do this, you know? And he's like, for England, and he's before he could, well, he's about to detonate and Alfred shoots him, but doesn't go for a kill shot because it seemed like it just hit his dad's shoulder because he wasn't trying to kill his dad, but the bomb goes off. Alfred grabs the queen, whole place lights up, and Alfred walks out carrying the queen, and it's like hell of a way to end the season. It's like, yeah, like, because Alfred had talked about it. It actually felt good to save the queen the first time because for him, it's like, it made him feel good about what he had done. It made him feel kind of heroic, like, hey, I did the right thing. Because for such a long time, it's just like, after his time at war and just all the people you kill, like, even if you can say it's for country and stuff like that, it doesn't make it easier. But for the longest time, I think he finally felt like, hey, I did something heroic. I did the right thing. I did something good, you know? And I think in the end, he's going to have that same feeling now. But the whole sad thing is, well, it cost him his dad. We don't know how many people might have survived. We know at least the queen's alive, but a lot of that group is dead. The prime minister is dead. So what does that mean for, like, the Raven Society? Like, is anyone else going to step up to kind of take over, like, you know, are there going to be residuals of the Raven Society stepping up, or residuals of the No Name League going to step up? Like, what's this mean for Martha? Is she going to back away? I mean, it seems like at this point, like, the No Name League is straight up dead. We saw a few of these people, like I said, like Undine, for example, hung, but who knows if the others didn't, like, scatter around. Maybe the same thing for the Raven Society, but this is going to be something that ignites everything because literally the government has literally fallen apart because the queen, who knows, she might be unconscious right now, and like the whole country's going to be in turmoil about like literally what went down. And also the whole thing of like, only like anyone that would know that it was Alfred's dad behind this is Alfred himself. He might tell his mom. I don't know if he's going to lay that on her. Maybe he'll try to hide that from her, but also having to live with that. The Queen's going to know that, but it's also the question of whether she wakes up or not. What's that also mean for her and Alfred's relationship? Because she kind of cares about him, and it's like, hey, you saved me, but also your dad tried to kill me and potentially, maybe successfully killed the rest of my parliament. I don't know necessarily parliament. Well, I think that would count as parliament, that group that was there. Regardless, it's like, that's, like I said, quite the explosive way. I'm so curious what this could all mean going forward. Like, I feel like there's enough loose ends, obviously, because obviously we know there's still so much of Alfred's story to go, but like just this story in itself, like there's still some there's still some stuff that's like, okay, so where do we potentially go from here? At the time of me recording this, it hasn't been confirmed whether or not the show is coming back for a second season. I hope that it is, because I'd love to see the craziness that would ensue in the season. Because I'd be so curious to see where, because like so much was dealt with. Obviously, there's loose open threads, but in the grand scheme of things, just where, you know, all the parties stand, whether it be, you know, the more traditional stuff with the Queen and the Prime Minister, whether it be the No Name League or the Raven Society. I'm so curious to see where everything stands, you know, what story awaits our characters next. I'm also curious, is there going to be any more diving into Alfred's past or not? Because that's something, obviously, that's come up a little bit here and there, because obviously this is still relatively soon after him leaving the army and everything. But I'm curious, I mean, obviously it kind of came back to bite him in the ass, like his past, in a big way with the whole cousin situation. But I'm not saying of something of that extreme, but I am curious, like, are there going to, I don't, because it seems like that's not something he's necessarily dealing with anymore. So I don't know. I'm curious to see, you know, especially because, you know, Alfred does seem like he is on a better path. Because like he said, he's like, I haven't felt this way in a long time about like he did something good, you know. So like I said, I'm very hopeful to see if this series gets a second season, because I'd really love to see what they'd have in store for us. And now moving on to the series finale of Preacher. Holy shit, a great series finale. There is so much that went down in this episode, so we gotta break this down. First and foremost, let's talk about Featherstone's situation. That was really interesting. Her actually having that heart-to-heart with Tulip. And it's so interesting because obviously you can see the parallels between Tulip and Featherstone. Like in this moment, you see a lot of similarities because she's like, Sarah, you can't never do anything good. And I'm like, literally that's always kind of like Tulip's issue too, you know, and that's what she always tells herself. And it's so interesting to kind of see that, like, because for her, you know, she really believed in all of this, and now it's just kind of, you know, and then she met, you know, Klaus, you know, and, you know, her, you know, represent like, his uncaringness and his strength. She admired that, but now it's just like everything she believed in has kind of been thrown into question. And, you know, even at last minute she tried to, you know, kill herself, but it's like the pen like overheated or whatever and wouldn't pull. But Tulip, like, you know, fixed it for her, but was like, I'm going to hold on to this. And she's like, go ahead, I've got a whole bunch. But Tulip was basically saying that because it's like the whole thing of like, you non-believers, you're so selfish and looking out for yourself. But Tulip is like, at the end of the day, like doing stuff for yourself isn't really selfish, you know? It's kind of, you know, there is a form of like, what was the exact wording she used? There's righteousness in it. And it's actually interesting because it's like, despite everything they've been through, like that actually inspired Featherstone. So she confronts Hare, and he's like, oh, come on. Like, the fact is, like, this submarine's going to take us. We'll be together. You can pleasure yourself with my anus. I'm like, okay. But it's like, basically, it's almost everything she wanted to hear. But at the same time, she was very steadfast in her beliefs and everything. And she was like, you get on a tarp. I'm like, it's kind of interesting that this all kind of came full circle in that regard. Well, you know, but it was so interesting. I was like, how is this all going to play out? Like, he's like, you know, calling her Flufferman. She's like, my name, sorry, sir, but my name is Featherstone. Boom. He shot and killed her. I was like, wow. I didn't know what to expect, but it's actually kind of interesting. Like, the little bits I do know about the graphic novel that this is based on, obviously. I do know that Hoover and Featherstone died in the thing. It's actually interesting because they actually died in a different order. Because actually Featherstone died first. Hoover got pissed about it. He tried to kill Klaus for it, and Klaus ended up killing him for it. So it's just really interesting how it kind of, they did it a little differently. And if I'm not mistaken, because I'm pretty sure he actually killed Hoover he killed Featherstone in the comic book. Because that's why Hoover went after him in the first place, right? So it's interesting. Like they still kind of died by Hare's hands, just in different orders, maybe most and definitely under different circumstances. But it is kind of interesting that they did it like that. That's just something that immediately hit my mind. But at the same time, I'm like, you kind of feel bad for Featherstone because she kind of didn't get what she wanted in it. But hey, maybe you could make the argument, well, she did, because, well, I mean, I doubt she's going to heaven after all she's done. It's most likely like kind of going to hell, most likely. So there's that. There's also the big thing of like Jesus versus Hitler, drawn out like knuckle brawl. It's like, yo, look at this. I even love at one point, like Jesus, like Hitler was on Jesus' back, so Jesus kind of jumped up and kind of landed back on him. It's like, that's actually pretty dope. It's like, holy crap, like Jesus can scrap. So also it's interesting to see that Hitler can scrap. It's actually really interesting and he's like, and Jesus is up there choking him out, and Hitler's like, Jew. He's like, you're goddamn right, and ends up killing Hitler. I love when God comes in later on, he's kind of throwing a blanket over Hitler, be like, Dad! And it's like, wow, you killed Hitler. Which always makes me wondering about those rules about like, well, when you die, like, I'm assuming he went back to hell, but I wonder, did he take over his position as Satan again because he died again? So I don't know. It seems like, even though you're technically dead, well, he did come back to life, so that's something to kind of be thought about. So I'm assuming he ended up right back in hell, and he probably just, I'll just do my Satan thing, my leader of hell thing. I don't know, that's what I'm kind of assuming, but I love that. There's just so much that went down. Okay, Eugene, they were like, oh man, the surgeon had been working so hard. I was like, oh my God, did they fix Eugene's face? Is that what this is all going to end with? I was like, and then they take off the bandages. He still has the same face. And it's just like, the people, and they're like, show it, like one of the doctors is like, show him some decency. And it's like, wow. And then at the same time, it's like later on, that same doctor, whatever, is like, okay, I'm here to help you. It's like, okay, if you want to, like, press this button, like basically telling Eugene to kind of kill himself. And for him, it's like, he spent 18 years. His life has been hard. People have laughed at him. But the hardest and the most terrible thing about it is having people like you feel pity for me, saying like, I should kill myself. Like, you're thinking you're doing me a mercy and doing me right. So it's like, get the hell out of here. And then he's back on the street. He's doing his song thing, but no one's paying any attention. And then he goes into his rock mode, and it's like, yeah, Eugene. I'm like, yeah. It was pretty dope. And he's kind of hearing like the rock star, like fans applauding and cheering. He's almost hearing like the electric guitar from him doing his acoustic thing. But still, it's so dope. And seeing Eugene just genuinely happy like that, I'm like, oh, that's dope. We'll circle back to that soon enough. Obviously, there's the Humperdew situation with Cassidy, and it's like, all right. And then it's like, come on, Humperdew. Obviously he didn't want to do this whole situation because he knew what it meant. And so in the end, Tulip comes over and she's like, Cassidy, what are you doing? Like, she ends up hitting him because, for her, it's like, I get it. I can't help it. Like, I've loved Jesse since we were kids, and I'm always going to love him. He's back now, too. And yes, you're like my best friend, and I love you, and, you're always the person that makes me laugh. And he's like, also the person you screw when you're sad. And she hits him again. He's like, the fact of the matter is, you've done a lot of terrible things of hurting me, and I've never done anything back to you because I love you. But you hit me again, I will kill you. I'm like, and she's like, I'm sorry, Cass. And she hits him again. And it's like, the fight I wasn't expecting, Tulip versus Cassidy. Also, the fact is Cassidy can hold his own. Because, like I said, I feel like this season to this season, like, Cassidy can scrap. Like, him and, to be fair, we saw that in the Tombs, but, like, even Bear Fitz, he's pretty, like, he can handle his own. Like, I always felt like Cassidy was always getting his ass kicked. But to be fair, the only person we've ever really seen him kind of really, really, really actively fight was, like, the Cowboy. And that's kind of like a super unfair fight zone, But regardless, I was like, that's so interesting. And they're just like duking it out and everything. Things getting messy and bloody. And it's like, holy crap. Because you can understand, because for Cassidy, I think it's the thing of like everything that God was promising him, kind of what he said, like a second chance. Plus he didn't want Humperdew to die. So there was that. But at the same time, too, at the it's like, he's like, am I still he's got the gun pointed to him. He's like, am I still the funnier one? And she's like, yeah, actually you are. And then she kind of smiles and laughs, and he kind of smiles and laughs too. And then but there's people approaching. It's about Humperdew, and it's like, all right, so what are we going to do about this? Cassidy, he doesn't want to do it, but even Humperdew is like, do it. And it's like, he's kind of sorry about it, and he ends up killing Humperdew. I'm like, whoa. And you can see that it does break Cassidy's heart. tying this in with the whole cowboy trying to kill Jesse thing. But it's like, oh yeah, as I try to warn you, don't mess with their baby. And Genesis' parents show up to defend him. It's like the cowboy shoots at him and they block the bullet with a slice from their sword. I'm like, yo! The cowboy's about to have a match. Because the fact of the matter is, he got hurt in this fight. No one ever hurts the cowboy. Like, the only time he's ever really been hurt was when Sydney was whipping him in season 3. That's literally the only time he's ever really been hurt. So to see that they can even cut him and make him bleed, but because of his weapons and what he is, he can still kill an angel and demon. They can't come back to life like they normally would. The circumstances work differently with him. So he ends up killing both of them. And it's like, oh, that's so heartbreaking, especially because the angel dude is like, no, because he ends up killing his the demon, and at one point he's even slashing and slicing at her and everything, and the angel's last words to him is like, our baby, look after our baby, but also like do the right thing. And it's like, what is the right thing? And so Jesse comes up with something. It's like, all right, you got me. So this is what God's promised you and everything, but is that what you really want? And in that moment, the next thing we see, Jesse slices his throat, killing the cowboy. So it's like, okay, so what did Jesse kind of give him? We'll kind of circle back to that. But now it's the whole thing of like, hey, the apocalypse didn't go down. We see that God's leaving. I also love that God's literally in the crowd in that group. That dude was like, hey, so let me tell you about this and that. And it's just like God's been like, yeah. He has to listen to the dude's complaints. It's like, I've listened to enough of your prayers and stuff like that on like cassette tapes and stuff like that. Let the apocalypse kind of roll out and everything. So, but still, he's leaving, and then he sees Klaus, and he's like, run. And Klaus is just running. So there's that. Then, Jesse, Tulip, and Cassidy were able to take a moment for the whole Humperdoo thing. For Cassidy, it's like, oh, like Humperdoo, like he was nice basically to everyone, whether you're good or evil, whatever the case may be. The fact is, he made me feel a certain way. So, like I said, it breaks his heart about the whole Humperdoo thing, especially because they spent 3 months with Humperdoo too. So that was kind of nice. It's also Jesus and God, because God's like, hey, you get to be the Messiah now, but Jesus turns it down. He's like, wait, what do you mean no? And Jesus is like, yeah, I mean, it's kind of not what I want. They're basically saying that humanity's not as bad. That basically like, hey, there's good stuff about them and everything. And God's like, the fact of the matter is, this isn't really about all of that. They're basically saying like, hey, like, this whole Messiah thing is meant to be more of a role I want you to play, but God, Jesus is like, nah, what about these 3 things about life? But his dad kind of ignores him and walks away, and it's like, at the end of the day, you'll never get your father's love and attention. So there's that. And so it's like, Jesse's there talking about the fact of the matter is, God's gone again. He's talking about the fact is that, God always made him kind of see the worst in himself and made him not see the best in the people he cares about. And so he's like, kind of saying he's done, but actually, no, I'm not done. I don't care how long it's going to take. I will find him. And he basically orders everyone that's watching to turn off their TVs, no apocalypse. So meaning all those people who are supposed to set off missiles and stuff like that. Yep, that's not happening. I even love the lady being like, well, that sucks. I was kind of hoping that this whole thing would go down, but okay. But then he tells everyone in the Grail, find God. And they all kind of march out on their new orders and everything. I'm like, that's so dope. And, you have Cassidy being like, holy crap. The 3 of us, we literally saved the world. He's like, and Jesse's like, yeah, I mean, how many people can actually say that? And then, in a real meaningful way is what he was trying to say, that Cassidy was saying. But then he was like, oh, the church can say that. Frodo Baggins, and they're like, Tulip and Jesse are laughing, and he's like, but Jesse's like, Frodo is a made up character. He's like, what? He's like, he's a fictional character. It's like, well, what? No. It's like, well, yes, he was a fictional character, and he lived with the wizard. Actually, no, he didn't live with him. Cassidy's correcting him, being like, he was a guest. But Tulip interrupts by being like, to the end of the world. So it's like, so what's next? And even I'm like, yeah, what is next? Hard cut. 2 years later, I'm like, what? We're getting some time skips. I brought that up about the fact that series finales always seem to have time skips. We'll get to that soon enough. But I love that we're kind of catching up with everybody. It's like Jesse and Tulip kind of almost seem like they're in the same avenue again. And it's just like, oh, because of the whole Rodriguez brother situation, it's kind of catching up to us. So And she's like, do you still have your lighter? And he's like laughing. And she's like, don't tell me you lost it again. He's like, no, I got it. It's just, he loves this moment, being with Tulip and everything. It's just, this is kind of, I don't know. It's their comfort zone. It's their thing, Then they go back to what seems to be, Tulip has like an auto body shop. And, it turns out they've got a little girl, and I'm like, oh, and Jesse being like, oh, she looks so much like you. Then he gets the call about, hey, the Grail found God, and it's like, oh, where is he at? The Alamo. And particularly he was in, because they made a point to be like, oh, he's in San Antonio, Texas. And so, because they're actually, which is, I guess that was kind of the point too, because it's like, well, because they are in Texas. I'm assuming they went back. Well, they can't go back home, but still. They went back to the state of Texas at the very least, it's home, because obviously ended up still going. But regardless, there's a whole thing of like their confrontation's about to happen again. And so Jesse sends the Grail on their way. A couple of them end up passing out because you see they're all kind of roughed up. They've probably spent the last 2 years, because it's kind of like Genesis doesn't give leeway. Like unless you give specific orders, they take it literally. So they probably haven't stopped for the past 2 years. So they've run themselves. So people literally probably die from exhaustion because they've done nothing but search for God for the past 2 years. And then Jesse and God, just to test it out, it's like, he's like, go ahead. He's like, make it night, make it day. Boom, God makes it day. Make it night. Boom, makes it night. So it's like, okay, so Genesis does in fact work on God. And so it comes down to it. They actually have a sit down and they talk. He's like, so what about kids with cancer? It's like, well, it's meant to, put you through some stuff, make you stronger. Yeah, but it also kills. It's like, yes, and it gives people who stay behind the strength, to kind of deal with it. He also brought up the whole alien thing. It's like, oh, no. He's like, really? Just out there in the universe, like other planets, those we've been to, even the ones we're not aware of? It's like, well, what do you want? Like these people to kind of show up and blasting you? Haha, they making a joke. So that's kind of interesting to make it be like, oh, no. Aliens aren't a thing. So I thought that was just kind of an interesting situation in itself. So, just like that casual talking and everything. It's like, oh, she's about to go to the store. It's like, do you want anything? And Jesse's like, no, I'm good. I'm like, this is so casual. And then, and then Jesse really asks the question he really wants to ask, is my dad in heaven? And it's like, well, you prayed super hard for your dad, and because I keep forgetting, Jesse blames himself for his dad's death because he was pissed at his dad, and because his dad separated him and Tulip, and he was so pissed at his dad and he prayed for it. And it's like, for him, it's like, I forgot that was a thing. I always forget that was a thing. That's why his dad's death always weighed heavy on him. That's also why he always listened to his dad's words so hard, because it's like, I owe this to my dad because I'm the reason why he died. I prayed for it and it happened. But essentially, it's like, yeah, you prayed for him to burn in hell, but I didn't listen to that prayer. Your dad's in heaven. He's a good man and everything, which Jesse was kind of happy to hear about. He's like, oh, see, everything's good, right? Now, basically, all this wonderful stuff. Yeah. Now tell me you love me. He's like, I love you, Jesse. It's like, yeah. Now tell me you love me. And it's like, oh, so that's what this is. It's like that, like, because I made a point to be like, that's so interesting that he kept playing those tapes over and over. I love you. And it's like, because that's what this is all about. I guess that's why he killed the dinosaurs, because they didn't return that love. And it's like, I give all this love to you. Just come on, Jesse. Just say it back. Say you love me. And it's like, oh. He's like, honestly, we'd be better off without a whiny bitch like you around. And he's like, what? And then Jesse uses Genesis to toss God around. And it's like, whoa, that's nuts. I was like, this is it. And then, God is like, I'm going to pick basically tear Jesse apart and all of this. And Jesse's like, yeah, you can do all that, but it's still not going to make me love you. And then at one point, he's like, you're only able to do this because you had that power. Jesse does something I didn't expect. He's like, you're free. Genesis leaves him. I'm like, oh my God. And he's standing there as a normal man, and he punches God and stuff. I'm like, I did that a little out of order, but still, I was like, whoa. And then Jesse's kind of like, at the end of the day, he's just kind of, the fact of the matter is, you're not going to go back to heaven because we're better off without you. we don't need someone like you, because all you do in this world is because you want our love. So it's like, yeah, go back. It's like, oh, you want to replace us with what's next? He's like, go right ahead. That's your choice. But till then, I'm gonna go watch a movie. And Jesse walks away, and it's like, yo, that was like like Jesse had like, I don't know, that was like a triumphant moment of like, I win. So I'm gonna walk away. I'm like, I got what I wanted. I did what I needed. I finally got to say what I needed to say. So that was pretty dope. Then we get that amazingness of like God just apparently killing all, and it's so sad, and it's just like heartbreaking because he's killing them because it's just kind of knowing that like they'll never love him after everything. He's frustrated, and it's just like and he starts killing his new creations, and they're screaming out, "Daddy, we love you," and everything. I'm like, that's morbid. But then we have God going back to heaven, but his angels are dead. I'm like, the cowboy. I was like, but how? Because last minute confession, and when Jesse killed him, because you confess all your sins, you get to go to heaven. Remember, that was a negotiation thing. Well, that was always supposed to be the thing anyway. Because remember what Hitler said, like, no matter how terrible someone did something, as long as they repent at the end, as long as they confess their sins and repent at the end, they get to go to heaven. They literally sprinkled that in your face at the beginning. And now it's kind of like, oh, we see how that turned out. And it's like the cowboys up there. It's like, yo! This was Jesse's plan just in case God ever returned. But God's like, hey, the fact of the matter is, it's like, I can give you what you want, an eternity with your family. Just let me get to my throne and kind of return to, run heaven and stuff like that. It's like, oh, you can live in happiness and all this and that. But then the cowboy's like, but what if I choose hate? And then it's like God's like summoning up his electricity, and it's a draw. A good old-fashioned Western. Pretty dope way to actually end this. And the cowboy ended up killing God. I'm like, whoa. And then all of a sudden, cowboy walks over him. He sits in a chair and drops the doll, because I think for him it's supposed to be a thing representing the fact is he'll never be reunited with his family again. That's one way to look at it. But it's like him kicking it on the throne in heaven. It's like, what implications did that have? I guess it's just kind of like, well, he's not God. He doesn't have God's power. He's just there in heaven and just kind of like, or maybe it's just in his own way he'll search through heaven to find his family. If I don't know what the implications of that could be. I just thought that was kind of really interesting. But then we get to see where other people are. Like Jesus is working at like a store or whatever, and the guy's asking about paint and stuff like that. It's like, Jesus, I guess they're trying to find new purpose in life and everything. We see the dude's kid wearing a t-shirt for Eugene. It's like Eugene's rock star status. And I'm like, yeah. Then we got Klaus playing golf. I'm like, okay, this is interesting. And then cops show up. I'm like, yo, Klaus is about to get arrested. It's like, what's going on? He's running for his life. He gets tackled by the cop. But it's like, oh my God, he's jacking off. I'm like, oh wow. I was like, that's interesting. Was he really getting off on this or something like that? It's like, wait, your gun. He turns around, shoots both of them. Because I was about to say that was him kind of, I guess he learned, I took it as, oh, he took a book out of Humperdinck's page. I was like, that's really interesting. And then at the same time, it's like, oh, he's go back to playing golf and everything. I'm like, that's so fascinating. He kind of got away with everything. He got his looks back, and the fact of the matter is, it's like, oh yeah, this swing is probably going to end up going this way. It's like, you kind of got a happily ever after. I mean, I'm sure Jesse's not going to worry about costs. It's like, do your thing, whatever you want to do, fine. It's like he got his looks back. I think that's all he really cares about. The world, it's like, well, I had my ambitions and stuff like that, but. So that was probably a big thing that actually surprised me too in that regard, for things that are going to end that way for him. But it seemed like, Tulip and Jesse were happy. Obviously, we didn't get to see their full life, but I like that they kept up their deal of things. But I thought it was kind of interesting. And then we get another time skip, and it's like 40 years later. We see that Jesse and Tulip are gone. So I like to think they probably did a balance of the two, of trying to be good while also potentially doing a criminal thing. I think, because that's who they kind of were. I didn't talk about it, but I almost forgot, like the whole, as they were watching the movie before the time skip, we see Genesis kind of flying through the sky, just being free, being able to do whatever it wants. It makes you wonder, is it going to find a new host, or is it just going to wander around in its own, never being locked up again? So either way, that's really interesting. But like the 40 years later, we see that their daughter has grown up, looks exactly like Tulip. lo and behold, who's by her side? Cassidy, because they brought up Cassidy earlier, but I was like, so we're not going to get to see Cassidy at all? But it's like, no, he's there. And the fact that it seems like, obviously, with the state of things, it seems like, Jesse and Tulip just recently died. And in that time, like, in that 2-year period, because they had talked about the fact is that he had left, and it's like, will he ever come back? He will, when he wants to. And it seems like in that time he never did. Because I think for him, it's a thing of like, well, because when you live for such a long time, you just kind of let time pass by, but also just the complicated relationship that was. I'm sure he kind of just didn't feel like being around. He just wanted to give them their space. So for him, it's probably being around them would have been a reminder and all that. But still, I thought it was kind of pretty dope, this moment he's sharing with them, with their daughter, and being like, oh, she's like, I heard all these different stories. My dad said you were like the, what was it, like the bravest person he knew or something, the courageous person. Or no, I think it was like even the strongest person he knew. And Cassidy was like, whoa, that means a lot, especially coming from your dad. And it's like, Mom talked about you all the time too. She really loved you, and it's like, Cassidy loved them too. For him, it's like he had been through so much, through his life. He's been shot, he's been stabbed. It's like, oh, your mom shot me in the heart twice and it still hurts, And it's just that thing of like, he's been probably, been around the world, done all this stuff. And it's like, she's like, where are you going to go now? Here, there. And he's like, I'm going to go somewhere new. And she's like, will we ever see you again? He's like, Jesus, I hope so. And it's like, I was like, that's kind of, because part of my brain also went to the place of like, because I'm not familiar with Twilight, but that's a thing of like, wasn't that a thing of like Jacob trying to hook up with like Bella and Edward's kid or something like that? I've heard people have made jokes about it, but because I've never seen the movies, I don't know how true that is. So I was kind of halfway expecting, it's like, well, she looks like her mom and you were in love with her mom, so hey, maybe I was like, is this going down that route? Also seems like she's got kids of her own too, so. But regardless, even that moment of her being like, she prays, she doesn't know why, but it's like, no, Cassidy's like, I understand why. And he's like, your dad would too. And she's like, he would? It's like, oh yeah, of course he would. But yeah, she's smiling, and then Cassidy, he has his umbrella. I'm like, oh, all right. But he puts it by the grave. I'm like, what are you about to do, Cassidy? I'm like, what? Cassidy walks out into the sun. I guess because that was the whole thing, too, for him for such a long time. He's lived like this. And I think for him, it's like he wasted so much time, and like the two people he cared about most in the world are gone now. He wasted so much time. And I think for him, it's like when he says, Jesus, I hope so, because he probably doesn't know what's going to happen to him when he dies. Like, will he go to heaven or whatever? I mean, what's that situation like now that God's not there? Like, who kind of really dictates that? Is it the Calvin? Like, like I said, there's so many implications. And it's one of those things with an ending where it's like, you don't know. I mean, it's always a thing of like, well, you want to know more, so like what this means, what are the implications for all of this? But him burning in the sun like that, it's actually kind of a depressing way to actually end the show. I was like, I kind of wasn't expecting it. I mean, you could say the same thing about it showing you like Tulip and Jesse dead, but I mean, it's like they're humans, so eventually they would have died. But it's like knowing that, hey, they lived a full life, their daughter's growing up, she's got kids of her own, so it's it's still kind of nice. But I think for Cassie, it's like he's lived a long time, and it's just kind of like, nah, I'm done. Because there's a good chance, hey, maybe I'll meet up with, like I said, the people I care about most. Hell, maybe I'll even meet when the time comes and their daughter passes away, like they'll meet up that way, that they'll all kind of be reunited in some shape or form. So it's a bit of a bummer of an ending, but at the same time, I think there's some, I don't know, like in an artistic way, there is some beauty to it. I don't know. I'm really interested to kind of like really look into like what are the differences between how this ends and how the graphic novel ends. I'm really, like I said, because I know, I'm really curious because like I said, I know they changed some stuff and I'm curious to kind of dive into it. But in all honesty, this was a great finale. This is a great way to end all of this series, and we kind of got. Everyone's stories came to a close, and in a way I was just like on the edge of my seat the entire time, like, how is this all gonna play out, dude? And I think it had a very nice wrap up, that maybe that's just my opinion. So either way, yeah, I mean, it's crazy. Like, I can honestly say I believe this might be one of my favorite shows. Because since the beginning of the show, I've always been like, dude, what's the next episode have? Oh man, I can't wait for the next season and the next episode, the next season. And I don't know, like, I think this is easily become one of my favorite shows. I love the story, I love the characters, I love the comedy, and it's just all that makes, I don't know, it's such an intriguing story. I'm really interested, like I said, to read the comic books. I do know some of the differences, but still, yeah. With these type of series finale things, I'm always, saying like, I wish the creator, cast and crew the best wishes in their, future endeavors and stuff like that. And, thanks to everyone involved for bringing this amazing show to me and many others. So thank you to everyone. But yeah, that's really all I want to talk about. Until the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.